Digitalization twists established business rules. Let's look at a few examples. What you see on this slide are world-famous companies who develop new business models, new business rules. And I assume that many who watch this video now have already seen this slide. Nevertheless, for the ones who have not, let's reconsider it. The world's largest taxi company owns no vehicles. Well, there we think about Uber. Let's think about Facebook. The world's most popular media owner creates no content. Alibaba, the world's most valuable retailer, has no inventory. Airbnb, the world's largest accommodation provider, owns no real estate, and so on up to Netflix, the world's largest movie house, owns no cinemas. Well, not all of these sentences are 100% true. Some of them own some real estate, some inventory or so on, but by and large they are true. And this is striking because 10 years, 15 years, for some part 20 years ago, nobody would have thought that these sentences would ever become true. But today they are. So we see that with these digital native companies, these digital companies, a lot changed in terms of business rules. And what changed there? Well, business models changed. You don't have to own real estate, inventory, vehicles or so on for being in the accommodation, retailer, taxi business or the like. In these new business models, we see that the end user interface has a very high importance. Consider Uber, for example. What is Uber? Well, you could very simply say it's an app. But behind that app, there are many orders for taxi rides, for Uber rides. And there are independent drivers. Some have small businesses, others are private persons who drive. Uber has the capacity with the app and with the algorithms notifying the drivers upon new requests to steer the business to one or the other driver. This becomes apparent with Airbnb as well. Whether you are able to rent out your apartment and the price for which you are able to rent out your apartment depends on how Airbnb ranks you, how they position you in the search results. So these companies own the end user interface, the customer interface, and with that have a very strong market power to decide who at the back end, who then delivers the service or delivers the product, gets the business. We see that industry structures change. We see that new small providers come up. Taxi businesses usually were larger companies than Uber drivers, either individually or as micro enterprises now are, and we see this in other businesses as well. But we also see a digital and physical combination. This is not all about digital. It's about using the digital part to steer business in the physical part if we consider things like Apple, Airbnb, Alibaba, Facebook or Uber. For some, if we think about Google search and the advertising behind it, about Netflix, then it might be, for some part, purely digital business models, but most of these are digital and physical combined. And while these examples are from the business to consumer, the B2C context, and we see that a lot of what we call digitalization started in the B2C context, it by now evolved way into the B2B, the business to business context. As said before, I think many people have already seen this slide. Two less known examples which relate to this are what you see here. Technology is not the real disruptor, as one might think if we talk about digitalization, digital transformation, digital disruption and so on. But not being customer-centric is a bigger threat. That's what I saw in a talk from Anja Stolz from Commerzbank. She picks up the example of Netflix, which you saw on the previous slide, and says, Netflix did not kill Blockbuster. Ridiculous late fees if you didn't return a DVD in time did kill Blockbuster. Uber did not kill the taxi business. Limited access to taxis and fare control did. Apple did not kill the music industry, being forced to buy full-length albums instead of streaming individual songs did. Amazon did not kill other retailers. Bad customer service experience did. And Amazon is definitely great at customer experience, customer service experience. Airbnb isn't killing the hotel industry. Limited availability and pricing options are. So don't be fooled by thinking that digital transformation is purely driven by technology. Definitely technology is a part of it, digital technologies and digital media. But then in the end, it's being customer-centric, it's having the right business models around the technologies, enabled by the technologies, which makes a real competitive advantage. The other perspective is from Mariana Mazzucato, and you can listen to her explaining this in way more detail than I do here if you click on the link there and visit the YouTube video. She says that Silicon Valley entrepreneurs innovate, but so do states. And thinking about states, you typically don't think they are overly innovative. But what would Uber be without GPS, the global positioning system? Well, GPS was state-financed. What would Amazon be without the internet? And also, the internet was state-financed in the beginning and to date to some degrees. And the US government invested more money in Tesla and in SpaceX than Elon Musk did. So Tesla received something like 3.5 billion in subsidies. Typically, you don't think of states as being overly innovative, but if you have these long shots with new technologies, very high investment for establishing them, think about GPS and putting the satellites for that in space, or think about the internet, then it's oftentimes states, primarily the United States of America, who finance this basic innovation upon which others then can build their entrepreneurial activities. So is all this digitalization, digital disruption, digital business models and so on all new? Well, kind of, but not fully. The use of information technology, information and communication technology got a big boost in the Second World War and since then developed gradually, but with increasing speed. And in the last century, we had already things like electronic data interchange, we had mainframe computers, we had PCs and so on. Then around the 1990s, we got a big hype of the internet, the World Wide Web, Web 1.0. Towards the end of the last century, then the e-commerce boom and bust at the turn of the century. Then Web 2.0, smart devices, apps and so on, which emerged during the first decade of this century. And by now we are somewhere in a thing which we call the digital economy, where things are different from before. You can't say there is exactly one turning point and in this year digitalization started or so on. But what we see today in terms of digital economy is different from what we saw 20, 30, 50 years ago with the use of early ICT systems.